Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Mile podcast. Today I'm linking up with a lady who is hardcore. From the word expedition to exploration, she has taken adventure to a whole new level. Being dubbed as the female Bear Grylls, she has a brand new 2-part adventure series, Secret Amazon Into the Wild. It's coming on Channel 4. By journeying through one of the planet's last untamed places, she shows us why it's never been a more urgent time to understand and protect it before it's too late. From the mountains to the Arctic and the jungle, she has quite literally done it all. Lucy Shepherd, welcome to the Monday Mile podcast.
Wow, thank you. That was a very nice introduction. I feel like I should just go home now.
Yeah, boom, done. The podcast is over. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm enjoying this lovely winter sunshine.
It must be quite surreal to just go on a sort of casual walk where there's no snakes, no flying wasps, or brambles to crawl through.
I love it though. It makes you, I know I'm a big one for, it sounds a really weird thing to say. I love a bit of suffering to make you realize just how much you love these sorts of like walks in the countryside. We have it pretty good in the UK. It's amazing that we don't have the sort of any really poisonous snakes or anything that's really can kill you too much. It's pretty good.
It was funny this morning, there was a moment on my run where I felt a small part where I was like, oh, this is a struggle. And then I thought of you and it really put things into perspective, because when you approach an expedition or adventure, a huge part of it, there is an element of suffering there.
No, definitely. In a way, I mean, I sort of plan everything as much as I possibly can. It's a big thing about what I like doing. So you get an idea in your head and you start planning, and obviously these things are dangerous. So you spend a lot of time like mitigating the risks as much as possible. And that kind of means that you have to be like a little bit of a pessimist, because you have to think of everything that might go wrong and how would you then deal with it. But then inevitably when you're actually on the expedition, there's going to be suffering and you've kind of prepared yourself for that. But equally, you know, if everything went to plan, like everything, I feel like you wouldn't get the same sense of adventure that maybe you've gone out there looking for.
That kick.
Yeah.
How does one go about getting into adventuring? Because from my side, I love to explore, I love to travel, and I'd see an adventure as a little hike, you know, maybe like an hour up, an hour down, but I think what you've done is another level.
But I think that's the thing. I think you can take it to like everyone. I like to say everyone is an explorer in their own right. Like you don't have to be doing. Everyone sort of have their own expedition and an adventure. But when I get asked like, how did you get into it, or how does one become an explorer, I actually find it quite a difficult thing to answer, because it's like I'm so aware that it sounds a ridiculous job title. I know it is. I mean,
it is your job. That is what you do for a living. Like, that is so cool.
No, I think, I took a bit of confidence. For a while, I was sort of using the word adventure and things like that. And then I started to do more expeditions that were very much, I felt it was exploration. But then I came to the conclusion, like, the term explorer, I get like fascinated by words. So like you said, the expeditions and exploring and things like that. And I thought, what a shame it would be if we just held explorer in the history books and we just kept it there. Because actually, if it's all about perspective, it's all like, well, you watch a kid in a garden, they're exploring. You're exploring with the tricks that you do on your snowboard. Everyone is exploring to some level. So I was like, hey, I'm going to somehow redefine what it means to be an explorer. So that's when I was like, okay, I'll do that.
How would you redefine the term explorer then? To somebody that maybe is new to exploring, everyone's got their own level.
Exactly.
To a degree, right?
I think the definition of explorer is literally someone who experiences a new and unfamiliar thing for the very first time.
So like,
So like, yep,
would
you're
be like,
exploring a molehill.
there we go.
Yeah.
I've learned something new today. That is my exploration.
Exactly, but
I wouldn't have even known what that was.
But like, imagine if you were like a 4-year-old kid who doesn't know what that is.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
I mean,
you're
I
exploring.
could imagine like a 3-year-old crouching on their knees right now and probably playing with that.
Exactly, just as like a scientist is like looking under a microscope, you know?
Yeah.
They're exploring. Yeah, I mean, when we think of the term explorer, we think of like, I mean, I did anyway, 18th century, 19th century Edwardian man with a big beard, you know, woolly hat, which I'm holding now. But it doesn't need to be that way. We should reinvent it again and take ownership of it maybe.
You've travelled to uncharted territory, from the Amazon to doing regular trips in the Arctic. What I'm intrigued by is, how have you gained and built the skill set to be able to go into these aggressive environments and manage them?
Yeah, I think that was the thing from the outset, like when you said the question, which I think I might have just avoided somehow.
Just skirted around.
Yeah,
We'll get into it.
I'll get back to it. I sort of grew up with all these explorers that were on TV and reading about them and things like that. I noticed, I mean, yes, there was a common theme a lot of the time that they were male, but another common theme was that they were in the military. It wasn't for me really, but I knew that I would have to gain the skills somehow. So, I mean, my first expedition came, I was actually kind of looking for it because I about 15 or 16, I went on an adventure course in Scotland, and that was the first time I don't want to sound cheesy, but I feel like found myself. I think I grew up thinking I was quite a quiet kid, a little bit socially awkward maybe, or shy, but not really when I was outside. I went on this like adventure course in Scotland, and I was like I can actually climb mountains or hike mountains for hours on end and quite enjoy it. And then I was introduced to the word expedition. We were doing these mini expeditions, and I thought that word is amazing. How can I get myself on these? Didn't think expeditions still existed. And then I saw an advert in the paper, and it was asking for 18 to 25-year-olds to apply. They were going to select 10 people to take part in a scientific Arctic expedition for 10 weeks. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for. And I didn't think I would get in, but I applied and went through all the interview processes and the training and got selected. And headed off when I was 18 at the time, like with 9 other people, to the Arctic wilderness, completely cut off from civilization. And it was one of these revelation moments of like, I need to be doing this for the rest of my life. But how on earth do you do it? Because it's not like my parents are in exploring, they're not in the military. I didn't know anyone who did, even worked in the outdoor industry really. But I did know that there was this society in London. And I grew up outside of London, so it all sounded very glamorous and posh to me, but it was the Royal Geographical Society.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, that's where all the explorers are made. I've got to hang around there somehow. So after this expedition, I just started hanging around the corridors there. And you would literally see, I don't know if you know Ranulph Fiennes. He's seen as the world's greatest living explorer. He's done so many things, and you just see him wandering around with a briefcase kind of thing. And then I sort of made a nuisance of myself enough that made friends with someone who was ex-special forces guy. He was technically an explorer as well now. I must have made an impression on him because then he invited me on an expedition with him and his 4 other ex-special forces mates to go do something else in the Arctic, and went on that. And that was the first sort of bit of confidence I think I needed to think, well, I'm going to do this. It's all about learning the skills. So, I mean, you've got to learn from people better than you. So I realised I just kept having to find a way to be invited on expeditions and do things, because these things can cost quite a lot of money. So I had to figure out how to do it in a financially savvy way. And a lot of the time was just, latching on to people and sort of getting invited.
That have more experience
Yeah,
than you.
yeah. And then
So
just
would
learning.
you say your skill set has been gained purely through exposing yourself to people that have done it before?
Yeah, and you have no choice when you're in these environments but to learn fast. So you have to fail fast, learn fast. They want you to succeed because it's very important. And then you just put yourself out there, I think. Decide what you want to do. And then the mountaineering side of things, I mean, there's sort of courses you can do as well. So just gradually building it all up. And then realizing I wanted to make it as a profession, it sort of started realizing that around 2015. And one of the first hurdles I had to get over was I was seeing all these other people who were doing what I wanted to do and making a living out of it. And one of the big things they were doing was, giving talks, public talks about what they were doing. And I was the kid at school who definitely, when you had to stand up and say your name.
Yeah.
And you just like your face, without even wanting it to, your face would just go red and you would choke up and all this sort of thing. So I was like, I'm gonna have to get over that. I'm gonna have to like figure this out and be able to talk on stage. So I had to get over that. And then my other love, as well as like adventuring, is like filmmaking and telling stories.
Storytelling, that's
So,
the best.
I mean, I think that's such a need in so many careers now, isn't it? To be able to tell stories and get the point across and get the message. So I really wanted, the overall goal was to always bring the two lives together, of filming, storytelling and adventure together.
When it comes to the skill set required to be an explorer, what would you say are the pillars?
Pillars, good question. It depends what you're exploring, but I feel like I'm I'm an average or jack of all trades and master of none. So I like to do all the different environments and all the different skill sets. I'm not like gonna go solo K2, but I'm gonna, could be on a second rope and things.
I think for me the intrigue is the cold, because I've experienced the elements and I've snowboarded in -25.
Yeah.
So to be in that environment and learn how to manage the cold, well, I suppose you've got all of the pillars.
Yeah.
Heat, water. Talk me through that.
I think the main one that covers all of those things is like self-discipline and like organization. All of them, you have to, the little small things make the biggest difference. So the smallest thing of not putting something in the place that you always put it in your bag could lead to your hands going numb, to then lead you not being able to deal with the rope. It could then lead you stuck on a mountain. It kind of just snowballs so quickly. So you have to be very organized and very like self-aware as well. So talking about the cold, for example, you have to, I think it only really comes with experience, where you have to know what's cold and what's like dangerously cold.
Okay.
Things like that. So,
and talk me through that. Like, explain that feeling. There's cold and there's dangerously cold. Like, I've been in a shower after, 8 hours on a mountain, and my toes are all white.
Feeling, isn't it?
And you get in the shower and it's like this burning sensation.
It's
like, I swear,
horrific.
I've almost had frostbite so many times that now when I'm exposed to the cold, my toes just go numb.
Yeah.
Whether I'm running in central London in the middle of winter or I put my snowboard boots on for 2 hours.
Yeah, no, you probably most certainly have like cold damage, which will make you more susceptible to that cold. As soon as it starts to get painful, and when you're in, this is not warming them up, so this is when you're out and cold, starts to get painful, and like the colour of them will be starting to go white and swollen. That's starting to get dangerous. So when you have been freezing and then you go into a hot shower, it can be quite dangerous to like warm them up that quickly. And that's the pain that you're getting, because all the blood's like rushing back to your toes and things. Yeah, it is hard to
And have you felt that?
Yeah, oh, totally.
Talk to me about that feeling. Because people listening to this podcast, they will have been cold before. They might have skied. They might live in a cold environment.
Yeah.
But you're going to the extreme, and people haven't felt these things.
Yeah,
this is another level. And this is why you're different.
It gets quite scary, because it's like I was on Denali high camp, and Denali is in Alaska, and it's like seen as the coldest mountain in the world. We had actually spent way too long on the mountain anyway, because we'd been in a storm just below for 2 whole weeks stuck in a tent. Wow. It was a massive storm. It was minus 40 degrees every day, and it was like 90 mile per hour winds, so it was really quite dangerous. And there had been other teams on the mountain. They'd got to our point, but then they'd had to retreat because they'd run out of like food and gas. I decided that we were going to there was just 4 of us in our team, and I was like, we're packing as much as we possibly can. And that meant that we could continue up the mountain when it came up. But I think our bodies were they'd been battered a little bit. And we were at this high camp, and the sun goes down, then it just gets, you don't even have the sort of slightly warmth of the sun that you can get. And I was cooking dinner, melting the snow to cook dinner. And sitting there, and you sort of build this, you have the tent, and then for comfort, you build like a trench and the entrance of the tent so that you can sit comfortably, but it also becomes a little bit of cold well. And I just my toes were cold, and then I don't know, it's like a gut instinct. Your body tells you, something's wrong, and I just knew it there and then. I don't know what the feeling is. It's just a sort of something clicks in your body. I think maybe, when we're in our day-to-day lives, we kind of get a little bit detached from how our body really is. We kind of don't listen to it as much, but when you're in those environments, it's weird. You're kind of so connected with yourself that you kind of just know, and you really listen to your gut instincts in there. which I think is quite a good, healthy thing to try and bring back when you come back.
I think that's the interesting parallel, right? We live day to day in such a comfortable environment. There might be a little bit of rain or it might be a little bit cold, and our instant human reaction is to sort of retreat. But it's not until you expose yourself to those elements that life feels real and raw. Is there an addiction element to exploration, to feel those elements? Because it's so extreme by comparison of this delightful walk in winter.
Yeah, I mean, but I also think that we're all people have sort of caught on to the fact that we all do better when we expose ourselves to a little bit of something uncomfortable, like regularly.
Yeah.
It's like you were, saying, you went for a run today. And I think just by having that little bit of, kind of say that it's very easy for people to be resilient, because a lot of people are resilient, but I think the key is like to build it. So topping it up with like actively putting yourself in uncomfortable situations like regularly. And I think that bit's addictive. The bit that's addictive with exploration is you kind of are constantly shown that you're a little bit better than maybe you thought, because we all have doubts in our mind about who we are, and
Yeah.
it really shows you who you are. So there is no hiding at all, whether it's to yourself or with your teammates. Like, you're in this environment, forced to be in it, and there is no, like, you have to see each other's flaws, you have to see each other's like highs, and you see each other in such a raw way that it's like a catalyst to just get to know you. I think that's addictive. It really feels like what living used to be like. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but it feels like what living should be. It's like very innocent, even though it's tough, because you're sharing these things with each other.
Simplistic, raw, but also it gives a heightened awareness of how aggressive our planet can be.
How aggressive we can be, and
And
also
we
how
aren't
vulnerable we are as well.
We're not fit for it.
Yeah, I think we're all looking, maybe seeking a little bit more of a simple life.
It's taking it back to the raw roots of simplicity, yet seeing how almost aggressive our planet can be when you're out there in the wild and you're so vulnerable. There's nothing really that we can do
Yeah.
when a jaguar approaches you.
No, definitely. No, I sometimes feel a little bit guilty about it, to be honest, because I know that I've chosen to be like in these places, but then when things do happen, you're sort of just, am I being really silly putting myself in this situation for my like loved ones and things? So yeah, it does question it, because you do. Sometimes there is just stuff that you just can't control, and you kind of have to be at peace with that a little bit.
Being in these environments, you must almost hit the sort of threshold of fear. Is there a moment you can take me to where you've been petrified?
It's weird, because you almost have to like not have time to get properly into like the nitty-gritty petrified side. In the jungle, for example, towards the end, there was just a moment you kind of been holding your emotions like quite strong, because you're in charge of a team, you've got a job to do, you're kind of not letting things like enter your mind. As soon as negative, doubtful thoughts like enter your mind, you kind of have to like silence them. But then you can only do that for so long. There was like a moment where, been there for about 40 days or something like that, ongoing, like as soon as you relax in the jungle, there's something else around the corner that just like reminds you that you're...
How could you even relax in the jungle?
That's the thing, you think, oh, things are going okay today. And then like you become this close to sort of stepping on a venomous, deadly snake where there's like no rescue to get you. And it brings you back home to think, oh my God, it's also not just me I'm having to look out for, it's the team as well. I just had we had this horrible day where we were trying to get out before 3 p.m. and the maps weren't so incorrect. And we got to a ravine and we had to retrace our steps, and it's just, we weren't getting any closer. And things
Sorry, you say this so casually,
I know,
Lucy.
I know.
Oh, the maps went, and then we got to a ravine. How do you navigate in uncharted territory? Take me into the Amazon.
Yeah, so
the
it's
maps have
not
gone
easy.
down.
Not easy. The jungle in itself isn't easy, because like there's so much in front of you. So I go on compass and bearing, because even there isn't like GPS.
Okay, and what are we talking about? Is this like what I had at Duke of Edinburgh
Exactly.
Award?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So we're going back old school.
So we stand in a line, and I've got two people in front of me.
Okay.
So I can see if they're in a straight line or not.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
So, okay, I'm in the line.
Yeah. And then they're moving, and I'm going left, right with steps. People think they can walk in a straight line. They really can't. Like most people have a dominant leg, which is not normal with their right leg.
Yeah.
So most people over, a whole day are going left.
Okay. So I'm probably going right on that, all the way this way.
Yeah, you're constantly looking at that. And the maps we were using are 50 years old, but taken from a pilot who took pictures and scribbled what they could see. So they're so inaccurate. And so it really gets on top of you. And I had this one quiet, like private breakdown because there's no privacy in the jungle because you have to stay within like close vicinity because it's so easy to get lost. So I think it's just like in day-to-day life, you can hold your emotions up and like bottle them for just so long, and then eventually it would just come flooding out. And so that's what happened on one of the days or one of the evenings on that, and it was sort of unexpected, but such a good way of just having it out.
And why was that? Why do you think on that particular day you broke down? What was the tipping point in that moment?
I think there was a mixture of things. We had come very, very close. We'd almost lost a team member to one of the very venomous snakes that we were constantly around. That was one thing. And then just being like, when you're that close to the end, but still feeling like it's still so far away. And just the, exhaustion as well, just building up.
I can't imagine the fatigue. You're trekking for days in uncharted territory. Take me specifically to the Amazon, because you do have your new documentary series, which is out now.
Yep, now I go Secret Amazon into the wild.
That particular expedition, we are talking here about going into space where nobody has ever stepped foot.
I think a lot of even just saying that is like, it was a privilege and lucky to, know about this area and know that it was there. And we had a reason to go for like, half of it was protected and the other half needed to be protected. So we wanted to bring awareness to this area, otherwise it was a threat from mining and things. We have no idea what to expect. We have no idea how long it's going to take. Don't know what's in there. We don't know if there are people, like if there are actually people in there. How are they going to deal with us? What sort of animals will we be dealing with? I think the big one is rescue. Like now we always think that rescue is such an option wherever you are.
It's not though, is it?
It's just really not. Even on the mountains where you might be able to like reach a sat phone signal or radio signal to say you need a helicopter, but most of the times that you need help, it's like bad weather, or you're not going to be able to get it, or you're in a bad position. And in the jungle, I just knew that something happened. There was, at times we were 2 weeks away from rescue. That was the biggest thing to overcome. It's like, wow, it's very rare that you're always just on your own with your team with no backup.
That must be really terrifying, and I can imagine in that moment there must be times where you question, why am I doing this? And one of the main reasons which comes through in your documentary is raising awareness and how important it is to protect our vital ecosystems. So for those people that haven't watched it yet, why would you say that is so important?
I think over the years I've been doing this, you kind of have to like feel this connection with the environment and with our Mother Earth and things that it's quite unique, and I almost feel like this real urge, like it's almost a responsibility, this sort of share this like duty of care. We really need these ancient places. Like people always talk about our grandchildren. They always say, we need to protect the forests for our grandchildren. Like, it's not, like we shouldn't be saying that. I think it's a really dangerous thing to be saying that, because that's, again, putting like the responsibility or saying it's a future problem when it's like a now problem. I think the way you talk about things, the way you like, drive the narrative forward should always be like, it's now. And the beautiful thing is that we actually have the tools. If we stop cutting down the Amazon and we stop cutting down these ancient landscapes, we could turn things around.
And that deforestation is real. You've seen it with your own eyes.
Yeah, no, it's devastating. And it's not just that, it's, as a result of the temperatures of global warming, rising and the climate sort of changing in those areas, they're going through these, like just this year, they went through a horrendous drought. And that those droughts mean that forest fires, although they're, often man-made, they'll just spread way, way more. And this is like losing trees that are so old and losing landscapes that are millions of years old that we actually need. So
it must be really upsetting to see that, and the contrast between the uncharted territory, which you have stepped foot in. How different is that uncharted territory? You've mentioned bush snakes, jaguars. How do you even get through it? Like, this is crazy jungle. Take me through a day
take you through a day. Okay,
Yeah.
I can take you through a day.
Come on. I want to feel it.
Also, let me just say, when people say, oh, yes, it's unexplored and we have to like cut a line to get through, we're not cutting a path. We're cutting like fast growing vines and things like that. So big thing to say, but it's like, so you have machetes, small teams are really low impact. You wake up, you're sleeping in hammocks, first of all, because we were not, like very rarely were we next to big rivers or anything like that. No sunshine. Literally wake up to the sound of some bee and insect that wakes up at exactly like 10 to 6 sort of thing. You wake up, you get the fire going again, you have a quick breakfast of, I don't know, oats or something. And then you pack up, you get out of your dry clothes. So every night you sleep in dry clothes, and then every morning you have to like get on your wet clothes because nothing ever dries, but they're your day stuff. So it's almost like you have to immediately put yourself in that uncomfortable like situation by pulling on soggy, dirty clothes.
Oh, that must be horrendous.
And then your soggy boots. And then I've sort of made a plan of where I'm going to think we could get to in the day. And then we just set off. I'm like with a compass, stopping every hour to have a sip of drink. By 3 p.m, all the wildlife starts to come out. So you have to sort of, you have to finish. But in between that time, you're literally, so you've got a massive rucksack on.
Yeah.
You've got filming gear as well.
Okay, how heavy are we talking?
Starting 35 kilos.
Okay, 35 kilos. Now that's like that's a beast.
It is. And it's
Okay.
really hard to balance as well.
Yeah, we've got that on.
And then, so you've just got a bush in front of you. So you're like, okay, well, we got to go that way. So it's a case of doing this, and it's a case of like squatting and lunging and all of that sort of thing.
I'd be so petrified of all of the animals.
Yeah.
From what you said there, waking up to the sound of a particular bee, do you almost have to adopt the sync of the planet and move with the motions of the animals?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I think we're all capable of it as well. Things would happen later on in the week. The weeks went on. So there's these trees that are like covered in spikes, like absolutely covered. And you put your hand in, and some of them will be poisonous. Some of them will just like splinter your whole hand. And you're like looking out for everything. You're being so aware of what's next, and you're so on edge all the time at the start. But as the weeks go on, it's like, I think I read about how most of what we see is subconscious, isn't it? So most of the time what we're actually seeing, we're making up in our head what our brain thinks we're seeing. But like the weeks go on, when you're in the jungle, like surrounded by these things, and you're about to put your hand on something, but then something, even though you're not looking, something tells you not to. And so you just don't. And so I think that you start to become properly connected with it. And everyone talks about nature as being separate, like it's this other thing that we need to look after. But it's actually, I think what we need to realize is we're all nature. So we are a part of it, and we need to save ourselves as well.
Being in that environment really must bring that home, like that feeling of rawness. Like, I am now a part of this. You mentioned earlier the 6 a.m. bee call.
Yeah.
But then the retreating around 3 o'clock because of the darkness and the jaguars and the snakes coming to life.
The literally forest comes to life even more so at night time. And that's the big thing about in any of the places. You totally realise that you are no more important than anything ever. We're all on the same page and everything's just trying to survive. And so, everything just comes alive, and you just got to get off you've got to start looking for somewhere to put the hammocks, get off the ground, have some food and get into your hammock safely.
It must give you such a perspective on life, then coming back to London and seeing the busyness and the traffic. The documentary sounds truly fascinating. It is out now, so we will direct everyone to Channel 4. We are, of course, on the Monday Mile podcast, so we like to ask all of our guests, what's their relationship with Monday? Are there Mondays in the jungle?
Hello, Mondays. No, there aren't Mondays in the jungle. Every day is a Monday in the jungle. Now my relationship with Monday is actually, I'm like obsessed with I love Mondays. I'm working on it, but I have like a really bad relationship with weekends now because it's...
You love what you do.
Yeah.
I can see it in your face.
No, I just want, but also you just need things to drive forward, and often you're like waiting on people and you're like, why are you taking the weekend off? Well, obviously everyone should be taking the weekend off. Mondays are that time to like start new, aren't they?
Lastly, Lucy, do you have any life mottos or quotes that you live by or have learned out on your expeditions that you can share with our listeners to inspire them to get up and not only seize the day, but the week ahead?
One that I like to remind myself that keeps me, I guess, on my toes, and it's probably, it's kind of a made up word, but it's don't lose your botheredness. So that essentially means I take it as if you catch yourself saying or even thinking like, oh, I just can't be bothered. I can't be bothered. And that can be with anything. As soon as you think that, it's like my little rule. And I don't do it all the time, obviously. But as soon as you think it, you've got to snap out of it and you go, no, don't lose your botherness. Because again, like in the outdoors and stuff, like the little things become the big things. And it's the same, you know, if you don't follow up with that email straight away, something might not happen. Go for that run because you know it's going to make you feel better. So
go get it.
Don't lose your botherness. Yeah.
Seize the day and
Exactly.
be bothered.
Yeah.
Monday Mile listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us. Your journey is so inspiring and it's so different. You are officially the first explorer, expeditioner, adventurer on the Monday Mile podcast. So thank you so much for joining us and wishing you all the very best of luck with the new documentary and whatever is next, because I'm sure you've got something up your sleeve.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Monday Mile listeners, you know what to do. Please do subscribe. The audio drops every single Monday morning in the early hours for those early risers. You know what to do. Please do make sure you subscribe. Give us a little like, and as well, any feedback on the podcast audio platforms would be mega appreciated. Monday Mile listeners, it's a wrap.